Who is the man crying in my shower? There is an old Charlie Chaplin quote that reads as follows: I always like walking in the rain, so no one can see me crying. It's a thought-provoking quote, and it might even get you to ask the question, can someone tell if you are crying when you are in the shower? Asterisk. Well, I can answer that question. Yes, you can definitely tell when someone is shedding a tear in the shower. I found out this fact firsthand when I was awoken by the sound of sobbing, emanating from the bathroom. I rolled over in bed, confused at first by what the sound was, and checked the alarm clock on my bedside table. 6:58, it read. I sat up in bed, trying to figure out what could be making this strange crying sound. I knew it was coming from the bathroom, but I also knew that I live alone in my house, which I recently purchased, so I knew that no one else could be in the house with me. Maybe the sound was coming from pipes? Nah, that didn't quite make sense. It really sounded like someone was crying. As I listened closely to the sound, I could also hear the distinct noise of running water. At this point, I got out of bed and began to walk towards the bathroom. Towards the noise. As I crept closer to the bathroom, the sound of crying and running water grew stronger, and now there really was denying it. There was definitely someone in my shower. I approached the bathroom door, slowly turned the handle to open it and pushed the door open. I only moved the door just an inch, just enough for me to take a quick peep as to what was happening inside of my bathroom. From the small crack that I was peering through, I could see my shower, and I could see that the glass was all foggy, from the heat of the running water. I could also make out the outline of someone that was standing in the stream of steaming water. They were just standing there, not moving, apart from the rise and fall of their shoulders as they let out loud and heavy sobs. At this point I didn't really know how to approach the situation. Did I just swing open the door and confront whoever it may be in there? Or do I go call the police? Or maybe I should call out to them? That's the option that I went with. Excuse me, sir? I called out, my voice echoing around the tiled bathroom. But what are you doing inside my house and inside of my shower? Asterisk. There was no response from within the shower. The figure remained still, apart from their heavy sobs also echoing across the bathroom. Again I called out to them, this time a bit more aggressively. You need to hop out of my shower, right now, I called out. Again, the figure continued to cry, but they still not move from their position underneath the stream of hot water. Now, I was getting angry. How dare someone just come into my house and use my bathroom facilities? I called out again, the anger in my voice now very obvious. You need to leave right now, otherwise I am calling the police, I yelled out to the crying man. Once again, he didn't move a muscle. I know that I probably should have asked if he was okay, after all he was crying, but in that moment I just wanted him out of my house. I walked away from the bathroom door and went to bedroom to find my phone, so that I could call the police and report the intrusion. I had just walked away from the bathroom door and was almost back at the bedroom when I heard the sound of a tap squeaking slightly, and then the sound of running water stopped. The crying man had turned off the shower. The other sound that was now missing was the sound of him crying. There was now silence in the house. I walked back down the hallway and back to bathroom door. It was still slightly open like I had left it, so I quickly looked inside the room, just to see what was happening now. As I looked inside, I was astonished to see that the crying man had disappeared. He was no longer in the bathroom. I spent the next 10 minutes looking around the house, trying to find this man, but he was not in any of the rooms. He was no longer in the house. What was so strange about all of this, though, was that I was only gone from the bathroom for around 30 seconds. He didn't have enough to leave the bathroom and leave the house without me seeing him. Now, I do believe in ghosts and have heard many stories about the paranormal, but I have never experienced it myself. This was strange though, and my mind immediately went to possibility that this was a ghost that I had seen in the bathroom. I have previously mentioned that I have only recently moved into this house, only a few months ago, but I should probably mention that the house I moved into is also quite old. So, as you probably know, old houses and ghosts go hand in hand. The rest of the day continued as normal, there were no other paranormal occurrences. It wasn't until that night, when I had just finished using the bathroom to brush my teeth, that I heard the shower turn on again. I had just left the bathroom, maybe only a minute before I heard the sound. I heard the slight squeak of the tap and then the sound of running water. Only a few seconds after I heard the tap turn on, I once again heard the unmistakable sound of sobbing. I went back to the bathroom at a quick pace and opened the bathroom door that I had previously shut. Whatever was in the shower must have had it on quite hot because steam began to pour out of the room as soon as I opened the door. I looked across the room towards the shower and once again I could make out a figure standing inside. Their outline was moving slightly up and down as they let out loud wails and sobs. The figure was facing away from the door so I couldn't see their face, not that I would have been able to anyway. The glass shower door was too fogged up to see anything other than their outline. I took a step further into the bathroom, unsure as to how I would approach the situation, but I knew that I should say something to the figure standing in my shower. I took another step, my heart starting to beat faster and faster the closer I got to the shower door. What if it reacted violently? This is what I was thinking as I quietly approached the glass door. I stopped about a meter away from the door and just stood there for a moment. I knew that this was going to be a defining moment in the events to come. I knew I reacted angrily earlier and maybe that pissed it off. So if I tried a more gentle approach this time, maybe I would have more luck communicating with the figure. I cleared my throat and started by asking it a question. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I just wanting to make sure you were okay? I was just wondering why you are crying?" I asked in a polite voice. As soon as I began to speak, I saw the outline stop moving up and down. Their shoulders now sit still and the sound of crying stopped. It stood there, motionless, for a few seconds before I saw it begin to turn towards me. I felt fear begin to rise within me. It had acknowledged that I was there. It knew I was standing right behind it. The figure in the shower slowly moved its head until it was facing towards me. The rest of its body followed. The figure was now facing entirely towards me. I couldn't see any detail of the figure through the fogged-up glass, but I knew that it was staring straight at me. I didn't know what to do, so I just stood there, staring back at it. I saw movement from within the shower. It was now lifting up its arm, its index finger pointing outwards, like it was pointing straight at me. It moved its finger closer towards me, until the finger was resting on the foggy glass door that divided me and the figure. It began to write on the door. Its fingers slowly formed letters in the steam and it slowly spelt out a word. The word was backwards from where I was standing, but I could still make it out. It read, "Anniversary." I didn't know what this could mean. So I asked it. "What is it the anniversary of?" I asked out loud. The outstretched finger then began to write again. Next to the first word it slowly wrote out more letters, this time spelling out, "Wife's death." My worry grew deeper at this point, but so did my empathy. This figure was obviously crying because his wife died, but it still didn't make sense as to why it was in house and in my shower. I guess that she probably died in this house. After processing the previous answer for a second, I asked it another question. "Did your wife die in this house?" I asked it, even though I was pretty sure of the answer. The finger began to write once more and it wrote the word, "Yes." I wasn't surprised by this answer and I was about to ask it another question when it began to write again. "Long before you" were the words that it wrote on the steam-covered glass. I stood there for a moment, thinking of what to ask next, and so I decided to find out more about the wife's death. "How did your wife die?" I asked out loud, fearful of what the answer may be. The figure sat motionless for a short while, its outstretched finger just sitting there motionless. Then it began to moor and write something else into the glass. "Drowned." As the word appeared in front of me, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was beginning to make more sense as to why this thing was standing in my shower. The finger began to move again. This time it wrote a question for me. "Do you have a wife?" It wrote. "No, I don't," I answered. The finger then wrote another word. Just a single word this time. It wrote, "Shame." Then before I could even process what it had written, it wrote one more thing into the glass door. "Turn around." I read it and immediately knew that I didn't want to turn around, but I didn't want to anger this thing. So, I did as it asked. I turned my back towards the shower, waiting for whatever it was going to do next. My heartbeat was racing as the dread of whatever it may do me set in. I stood there for maybe 30 long, agonizing seconds, but then I heard the sound of silence. The water had been turned off and then there was no more sound. I stood facing away from the shower for a little while longer and still nothing was happening. I decided it was time to turn back around and face the shower again. I slowly turned my body and faced the shower door. As I turned back, there was one more sentence written into the fog. It read, "I killed her." My heart sank as I read those words. Whoever I had just been communicating with was a killer. Of his own wife, no less. I didn't know what to do. There wasn't much I could do. except hope that I didn't hear or see from the crying man in the shower again. This is exactly what happened for the next couple of days. There was peace within the bathroom. No sounds of sobbing or running water came from that room again. I thought that maybe he was going to leave me alone now. I thought, or rather I hoped that that was the case. How wrong I was though. It was only 4 days later before the next incident occurred. I had been at work all day and was driving back home. It was just before I turned into my street when I could see the unmistakable blue and red flashing of the police. When I turned into my street, I saw them. The 6 police cars all parked out the front of my home. I slowed down my car and slowly approached my house. I parked a few meters away from my home, got out and jogged over to the nearest police officer. "What is going on here?" I asked the officer. "I am the homeowner and would like to know what is happening." He looked at me for a second before answering. "I am sorry to inform you of this situation, but we have caught a killer on your property," the officer responded. "What do you mean?" "One of your neighbors reported a sighting of a wanted man. Paul Scorp was a wanted man. He was responsible for his wife's death. Drowned her right in this house. In your house. Killed her right in your shower." The officer must have seen the look of confusion and horror on my face because he then continued to speak. "I'm surprised you don't know about it. I'm sure it would have been mentioned before you purchased this house." It was the first I had ever heard of it. The real estate agent had never mentioned anything of the sort to me. "How did he get back into the house?" I asked the police officer. "Well, that's the part that is most disturbing. There is evidence that he may have been living inside your house for a few months. There was a small area in the bathroom that he could crawl in and out of. He had been living in there for, what looks like, quite a while." The realization hit me. The crying man in the shower was not a ghost. I had been speaking to a real man. A real killer. It was too much for me. I didn't know what to do. I only let out a couple of words. "So, the man in the shower was real?" I managed to say. "A man in the shower?" The officer asked me, "Was he crying?" I looked at him for a moment before answering his question. "Yes, he was, but how do you know that?" I asked. "Well, that is strange." The policeman responded. "Paul just claimed that he was innocent. That it wasn't him that killed his wife. He said it was the crying man in the shower that did it."